In this video, you're gonna learn about the benefits of using a MIDI controller to mix your broadcast audio for your worship services. And this is particularly useful when you're using a digital audio workstation like Ableton Live to mix for your live stream. So we're gonna cover the benefits of using a MIDI controller like the one we have here. We'll also cover some of the other options for MIDI controllers that are available depending on your budget. And then we're gonna demo this Faderport 8 by PreSonus that we have hooked up to Ableton Live, and you'll be able to see this device in action. Coming up. My name is Jake Goslin with Churchfront.com. I'm a worship leader, and I'm joined with Chipper Lloyd, who is the music director in our worship band at Mission Lakewood Church. And we're all about helping you lead gospel-centered and tech-savvy worship. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our latest videos to help you grow yourself and grow your worship ministry. So in our own worship ministry at Mission Lakewood Church, and for the worship ministries that we're working with through Worship Ministry School, we recommend using a digital audio workstation like Ableton Live to mix your audio separately than what is being mixed with your regular digital mixing console, say an X32, in your live worship venue. This is gonna give you separate control for your broadcast mix. You're gonna have pretty much unlimited track count, so you can continue to scale out your digital audio workstation project as your band grows, and you'll never really have to worry about running out of tracks or channels. So the benefits of having software control like this is its scalability, as well as just the sound is gonna be so much better than what you can achieve with a typical digital mixing console. So the first question we need to address is why use a MIDI controller in the first place? Well, the reason is when you're mixing in a digital audio workstation like Ableton Live for your broadcast mix, you want to have a much quicker and efficient way to adjust all the different channel levels than having to do gymnastics with your trackpad or mouse and then having to bounce around the software to adjust those different levels. Because in reality, your trackpad and your mouse is only useful in finding that little thumbs up button below this video and then clicking on it so hard that it turns blue. So once you've smashed that like button on this video, it's a good idea to get a MIDI controller for your digital audio workstation because it's gonna make your mix engineer's life so much easier. So Chipper is actually the one who's responsible for mixing down our worship services week in and week out for our online church. Dude, tell us a little bit more about what that was like for you going from having to mix with his trackpad to transitioning to like a MIDI controller.
Since I started mixing for Mission Lakewood and post-production and stuff like that, the PreSonus Faderport has probably been the most amazing piece of gear that we've gotten to help me in that process. So moving from using my mouse and my trackpad to do all the mixing with the faders and everything, it makes my workflow so much faster than it was before. Having these faders, like these vocals, and making my reverb and delay just right here, it makes the process just so much easier and so much faster for me. What used to be a 30-minute edit, now I can just run through the whole service just like once and then have everything right here. And it makes it so practical and so easy for us.
So there are various types of MIDI controllers out there. This is not the only one, and I highly recommend you guys do your own research and finding the one that works best for you. On the lower end of the budget scale, you've got something like this. This is the Nano Control 2 by Korg. We actually picked this up for our Sunday Sounds main stage template. And it's definitely seen better days. It's missing about 50% of the knobs and little faders there. And that's one reason I'm not a huge fan of this guy, because you get what you pay for. I think it was like $60, $70, and it really just doesn't withstand the abuses of portable worship ministry as much as I wish it did. The other thing about a lower budget MIDI controller like this is that these are not motorized faders. Even though if I adjust it here on this guy, it will show those changes in Ableton Live, but if I adjust the same channel in Ableton live, it's just not gonna respond here because it's not motorized. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to pay more for the Faderport or a similar MIDI controller. So when I was looking for options for motorized MIDI controllers, I came across the Faderport, and then there's also the Behringer X-Touch Universal Control Surface. I think both of these are very viable options for worship ministries, but when I was comparing the two, I just felt like the Faderport had a simpler, cleaner layout to it. I also think, I didn't actually look at the specs, but I think the faders are a bit longer, which again, I like and prefer these longer faders because that allows you to be so much more precise when you're actually, adjusting these levels. That's one of the really big downsides of the Nano Control 2 is that you just have to be so careful. Like you can easily bump the audio way too high or way too low because you just don't have as much travel with those faders. And then you can pay for some higher end MIDI control surfaces. For example, there's the Slate Media Technology Raven. This is actually a touchscreen MIDI controller. And I don't know, like when it comes to mixing, if you're gonna buy a separate MIDI controller, I would love to try out the touchscreen someday, but it seems to me like the hardware is a little bit more enticing because we're already working in purely software when we're just clicking with our trackpad and mouse here. I like having something physical to be able to dial in when we are mixing on the fly. But I would not be opposed to trying one of these Slate Media touchscreens out someday. And then of course too, your X32 mixing console, like the full-on mixing console, could function as a MIDI controller for your DAW. Often that's not gonna make a lot of sense though, because you're gonna be using your X32 probably for the actual live mix happening within your worship space. So ultimately, we decided to go with the PreSonus Faderport 8 because I really like these long motorized faders. I like the 8 channels that we have here because I don't ever find ourselves needing more than that. They have a 16 channel version, which would be great, but part of the beauty of this is that this can fit comfortably on your desk. We just wanted something that was small enough that it's not like lugging around another full-size mixer. And I was about to actually pull the trigger on this control surface, but I ended up just reaching out to the team at PreSonus who I've connected with before, and I was like, hey, I want to make a video about this and try this guy out. So thank you so much, PreSonus, for sending this over to me. And of course, this review, they didn't pay me to do that. They just sent me the device itself so we could try it out and then show you guys what the results are. And since we like this guy so much, I want to keep it, so I'll probably just end up buying it from them anyways. So now I want to allow Chipper to spend some time demoing this hardware in Ableton Live to you and kind of what his workflow looks like so you guys can get really clear picture of this guy in action.
So now I'm going to go over the Faderport and each section and what each section does when I'm mixing in post-production for our service. So these here are the faders. They are laid out exactly like they are in session view in Ableton, as you can see. And this right here, this knob, makes it so that you can scroll through the different channels. These here are transport controls. You can record, stop, pause, play. And actually, I really like this. It helps you scroll through Ableton really quickly, which isn't actually an option what you can do in Ableton itself. It actually is a really cool addition that you can scroll through here on the Faderport. A lot of these extra buttons here are really made for the PreSonus Studio One DAW, which is not what we're using, but from what they say on their buttons, it's not going to reflect what it's doing in Ableton. They basically just toggle through different aspects of Ableton, which is helpful when you're trying to make your way through Ableton, but really I don't necessarily use these a ton because I really like to just keep it in session view. So now I'm going to demo the Faderport 8, and I'm going to show my workflow and what I usually do when I'm mixing for our online service. I usually start by just playing a song, or what we've recorded, and try to get my levels kind of set the way I want. I usually keep my sub vocals right around 0. And since I'm leading the song, I'm going to bring my vocals up. Nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And then bring Jake and Kaylee's vocals down a little bit. They're singing as you speak, 100 billion creatures. So usually when I'm mixing, I'm usually just focused mainly on the vocals, the reverb, and the delay when it varies from who's leading song to song. I really like how you can group everything that goes under the band. You can just group it under band. So on the Faderport, it just shows up as one subgroup, which is band. So if the band was too loud, then I could just use this fader right here. And if I wanted to get more in depth with it, then I would just open up the subgroup, and then everything shows up. The keys, the acoustic, and the tracks, which is super helpful. So one of the ways that the Faderport comes in really handy when it comes to worship ministry and mixing is when we're transitioning from leading a song to a time of talking or praying after a song. Because often when we're singing, we have a lot more reverb and delay on the vocals, and when we're talking, then we need to bring that reverb down and bring that delay down. Now I'm going to show you this in action during a transitional point within our service. So you'll be able to hear a lot of reverb and delay on Jake's voice at the beginning while he's ending the song, and then I'm going to bring that reverb and that delay down when he goes into a transition to talk.
Father, as we enter in this time of worship this morning, we come before you just desperate for your presence, desperate for your peace, desperate for your...
So even though you can do this in Ableton just by using your trackpad and your cursor, it is so much easier to be able to do this on the Faderport just by using 2 fingers on 2 faders. This is so practical for our worship ministries because during this moment, during this prayer transition, I don't have to be over here in the DAW in Ableton doing click and drag for reverb and delay. I can just use 2 faders right here to just make it so much more simple and easy to bring down that reverb and that delay.
So hopefully you guys can see by now the benefits of using something like the Faderport or any MIDI controller like this, and how much easier it's going to make it for your mix engineer, whether it's a volunteer on your tech team who is going to be mixing for your broadcast mix, or maybe you have a professional or whoever. Rather than having to do gymnastics with a trackpad and a mouse and a cursor, they're going to have a simple hardware controller in front of them. They can make really quick changes as they're mixing throughout the service, and it's just gonna make everybody's life so much easier. And at the end of the day, I think you're just gonna be way more precise in actually dialing that in that mix as well. So hopefully you guys can see by now, after Chipper kind of walked you through what this looks like in action, just how practical this is for a worship ministry context, mixing for your live stream. Because you know, rather than having your worship tech volunteer or whoever's mixing for your broadcast have to do gymnastics on a trackpad and a cursor and a mouse, they can simply use these hardware faders to control the mix. And we really only scratch the surface of what these types of devices are capable of. But at the end of the day, we're just using it as a very convenient way to adjust our channel faders. So we're gonna link all the gear that we mentioned in this video, the Faderport 8, I'll link some of the other options as well if you have a lower or higher budget. So definitely check out those links if you want to buy one of these for yourself. And I also want to invite you to check out our Broadcast Mix Mastery online course. It is a comprehensive step-by-step course to help any worship leader or tech team leader create a professional mix for their live stream. I know for many of us, when we're listening back to our live streams, it kind of makes us cringe. The mix sounds empty, the levels don't sound right. You hear professional mixes on your favorite worship albums, but then when you hear your church's mix, you're like, oh, no thanks. So that's what this course is all about, is really equipping you and empowering you to create a professional mix for your worship ministry. And it doesn't matter if you have zero experience with software like Ableton Live or these MIDI controllers. We walk you through the whole process, A to Z, and we're really gonna help you master the essentials of audio routing, getting audio to and from Ableton, and then to your live streaming setup. Then we also dive deep into how to actually process and mix audio. And again, we assume that you know nothing about any of these different pieces of gear or software or even the fundamentals of mixing. We cover all of it in the course. So check out Broadcast Mix Mastery, linked below this video, and I hope to see you in there soon. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, smash that like button and share it with your friends in worship ministry. Don't forget to subscribe to the Churchfront channel so you don't miss out on any of our latest videos to help you grow yourself and grow your church.